it came time to the edit, Adrian Rosterola was already cutting another feature film, and so I sat in his his lounge room on a laptop and did an assemble edit of a lot of the film.
Having Shane do some of the initial assembling on some of the scenes meant that he had some time to experiment with initial intentions of how he wanted a scene to go. Whether it worked or not is another story.
I got to see a lot of the rushes, I got to see a lot of the film in its raw form, and I got to see what I already knew wouldn't work.
Instead of us going around in circles for a while, trying things out to see whether that would work.
So you were saying replace this shot or add another shot of him sliding down?
Yeah, Gabriel was meant to be shot and completed before Kokoda, but kept getting delayed, and with a weird twist of fate, they then became scheduled to shoot on the very same day. While rushes were coming in the 5-week shoot of Kokoda, the initial rushes were coming my way from Gabriel. So I was having a look at them, not all of them, just having a look at some of them, preparing DVDs for people to have a look at the daily rushes. So I was seeing some of it come in. So it was very overwhelming to begin with, the first few weeks, having all the Kokoda stuff come in, working with the assistant to make sure the system was working with Final Cut Pro, because it was, largely untested.
None of the codecs, none of the software talked to each other because this format was so new. And it was kind of really hard, I think, because of the fact that we were sort of cutting, not knowing whether or not effects could actually get these files and edit with them, and the actual Final Cut, at that point, the Apples couldn't nothing could read the tapes because of the way they recorded on the JVC. It since has been fixed up, but back when we were doing it, it was brand new territory.
It was an interesting one. Obviously, the JVC camera had just come out. HD was a new, exciting world, and I think the JVC camera had been out for 2 weeks. And and let's go shoot.
Matt Graham, who is probably the most unsung hero on this whole thing, Matt Graham. I mean, without everybody, the film would have got made, but Matt was sort of instrumental in the whole way through. We really wouldn't have had this film made without Matt Graham.
Every frame had to be iMeshed to be offline, and that in itself was a huge undertaking. I think it stands up really well. You've got to remember, it's a $7 tape in a $7,000 camera being blown up to 35mm with an anamorphic print. That's pretty good. That's not a bad achievement.
Some of the biggest challenges editing Gabriel were a combination of a lot of factors. There is the budget restriction, meant there were a lot of things in the rushes that we had to sort of cut around to hide the fact that it was a very low budget film.
Past that guy's ear, there's no set. You know what I mean? Just to the left of that person there's a car park.
Reading the script, I could see a lot of opportunity for lots of different styles of editing, like action scenes is one aspect, but then there's also making the story work on an emotional level, so there's totally two different things there. The first assemble was something around 3 hours.
We would also have to try and cut like this really long story, because it's actually quite long, what we'd shot down to around about 2 hours. And once the first time Hollywood had seen it, we had to cut it down a further 15 minutes. And what you kind of lost in that 15 minutes was Gabriel learning to do things, like learning to open a door, learning to eat for the first time. A lot of small little kind of nuances and things that I had wanted in the film had to go because of the fact of, we had to keep this tight enough for people to see it in the cinemas.
Are you going to put a swoosh sound in as well?
When we pull past?
Yeah.
I was just thinking, when Uriel goes to drink, for the audience's sake, should we not put something?
Just feel a bit empty.
It also forced us, which I'm really happy about, it forced us to find new ways of cutting scenes stylistically to still get the message and get the point, but get to the meat a lot faster.
Interesting.
When you think of where action sequences have evolved to now, it's got to a place where you can't really go past. Like the matrix, as soon as 3D animation becomes lifelike, which is almost there now, pretty much is, then that means anything's possible. So when you get to that place, what's beyond that? It's like it's gone somewhere that it can't go any further. So you've got to bring it back to another place and build up again something new. So this is going back in time, away from this area where you're going too technical maybe with fight scenes, and just people start to be blasé about it and think, yeah, another fight sequence, another bloody big shootout like that, whiz bang, and get sick of it. You've got to come back to grassroots and do it in a way where the story is emerging through the film with action sequences all there that are just serving the story, really. It ended up being what I'd brought to it and then what Shane brought to it quite often came to a third sort of style that just evolved and became what you see in some of the places in Gabriel.
Asmodeus, where is he?
There's a very high shooting ratio with this film, something like 80 to 1 or something like that. Very different. Kokoda was like 30 hours of footage and Gabriel was something like 100 plus. So a lot of takes had multiple actions in it. So in there's an evolution of a performance of certain things and lots of different variables in there. So trying to construct a performance in there that seems to be consistent with that character at that time and within a scene was quite challenging when there was lots of different ups and downs.
Just when you thought it was safe to go back, then arrives visual effects, which was, which was indie, which was like the biggest indie part of this movie. So we kind of had a turnstile system where we got there was an abandoned building up in North Sydney, and we kind of, for very cheap rent, we got half the building and got people in there, again, all working on deferral basis. And I think we ended up having about 805 effect shots in the film, and the hardest thing about that was that our visual effects supervisor, Steve Anderson, he was so busy with other projects. He was, I think, on the set 3 or 4 times in the whole shoot.
What was it? We had about 100 shots slated for visual effects when we filmed it.
That's right, yeah.
So we kind of didn't have anyone for the shoot, which made his job very hard at the end because, once everyone got to the post part, they were kind of like, well, where's the lighting references and where's the colour charts and where's like...
The wastelands out where Uriel's got his car park and his bus, all the cities added in the background, and the sky even was all comped in later on.
Behind the smoke that was in camera, so...
With black, cameras moving, no tracking markers.
No tracking markers. Yeah, again, that same environment where the girl is firing her sniper rifle, and there's some ridiculous camera moves going on. No markers at all. Thank God they're quick camera moves, so that's a lot easier to track in person.
And again, I remember the first opening space shop. I spoke to Tilney about that, and he said to me, you know what? He said on the budget and the time, he said we should have 6 guys on this for about 3 or 4 months, and this would be the way you want it. He said, but I've got 2 weeks, no money and no time, and we're still going to try and do it.
This sequence is probably about 2 weeks behind, so by the end of the weekends, I want this to be back on track.
I thoroughly enjoyed the opening sequence, mostly because we had a lot of freedom, we had a lot of fun making it. It was a bit of a long pull to get it done on time to the sort of duration and quality that Shane wanted. Originally wanted the whole sequence to be a lot bigger, a lot longer.
Originally it was based upon the Contact opening, wasn't it?
Yeah. So he wanted a physically accurate universe and got up to 3-minute zoom through a physically accurate environment that was just too big an ask for this kind of budget that we're working with. So pulling out all of the stops and getting a couple of great talents on that particular shot and working on that all the way through, I think really paid off. And I really am quite proud of the end result, especially given the resources we had. Yeah.
They have gone to a place where the light is cursed and darkness blinds the soul.
And both of us spent a lot of time running around shooting sunrises, sunsets, cityscapes, mostly nighttime cityscapes from various altitudes, various types and scales of buildings and urban decay.
Lots of late nights running around back streets and long exposures and stuff to get what you needed.
Hanging over the edge of a 30-story building, trying to keep the camera still on a 20-second exposure. And Jesus Christ,
I'm scared of heights. Steve would take me up huge high-rises and just hang off the edge of buildings. Sydney Dental Hospital, I think, let us use their rooftop. Shooting off that, high winds for about 3.5 hours of getting time-lapse photography.
That was never used.
Yes. So many things were left on the cutting room floor, which is interesting for a film that had so little budget and a tight schedule. We still had to cut a lot out, and a lot of time and effort was just not so much wasted, but had to be left out just to get the film to where it needed to be for distribution and story device. I love the eyes. There's over 130, 140 eye shots in the film. We did have the lenses in the eyes practically on set, and there were an awful lot of time and effort went into that. But they just did not come up on the video as well as we hoped.
Now, close your eyes.
There didn't seem to be enough to go around to actually blow up the soup kitchen proper. So the soup kitchen proper was slightly destroyed and filmed in a disheveled state from a locked off camera. And initially we had the brief from Shane to go and recreate the unbroken soup kitchen facade and then blow that out to camera with synthetic CG fire and shrapnel and such, and broken glass. There were a couple of extras sort of shambling towards the thing and going, whoa, back to an explosion that wasn't there.
Yeah, as you can see from this footage here, it's very, very basic and not the best grounds to start from.
No.
But, they didn't have the budget or time on the set to do it. So again...
And it was filmed as a...
Fix it in post.
Yeah, that's right. So we took a long look at it and decided that CG fire that big to camera like that is just going to be far too expensive to create. That's quite a computationally expensive thing, as well as a temporal one that it takes a long time to get that right.
It's not going to look the same.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so much easier to just go and get some real fire and blow something up. So we had a match mover work out the geometry of the set from photographs that we took on set, as well as from the actual footage of the plane. Modelled the entire disheveled soup kitchen to scale. Took that to a carpenter, had him build a 2/3 scale set. Painted the whole thing black, filled it with pyro, and set the bloody thing on fire in such a magnificent way. Whacked a couple of planks of 3D in front of it, and it came up okay.
The first thing I said to Sean with the sound design on the film was it had to be big. I mean, I love Bruckheimer films, and and Michael Bay and all those guys that have the fucking most biggest soundscapes in the world.
I'm a very big fan of the blockbuster film, and I really enjoy being basically blown out of my chair by the sound.
Yeah, and the most amazing, fantastic sound team. Like there was himself and Adrian Polinsky on the dialogue editing, and all the guys at Audio Lock. And they all kind of just got together like this big team. Yeah, just go again. Go again.
One more time.
And Brian, with the score, Brian was actually helping a lot with sound design with Sean as well, because Sean was working a full-time job. He just got married. Again, everything was against him, so we had to kind of also help him in that regard. So he was sort of working all through the night, designing this world and designing the soundscapes for it. You know, and we were all kind of on the outside trying to put it all together for him.
Basically what I had to do was take all my holidays, roster days off, throw in a few sick days, weekends, nights, so all of my spare time was taken up with this film.
Yeah, when it came time to do the score for the film, you know, Brian from the outset was up against a lot of things because we'd already had this fantastic temp score which Sony in the States had fallen in love with, and everyone on the film had fallen in love with. And it had, you know, multi-million-dollar big orchestral sort of soundtracks attached. Then we gave Brian, you know, the smallest budget on earth and said, you've got to make something huge with this.
I think I had in total probably about 10,000 Australian dollars, which also had to feed me and keep me alive for the duration of the time working on this beast. In total around a year. I was lucky that I had the time to try to achieve a ridiculous size score with no money. There's no way I could have churned that out quickly because I needed time.
A lot of times I just let Brian to it. I just said, you know, the intention of this scene is on the screen. You can see it. You remember when Matt and I were writing it, what the intention was. You were there for some of the shoot. You knew what the vibe of because Brian was so sort of entrenched with us the whole way through the shoot. By the time it came to the score, I didn't have to explain a lot of what the intention was or what we were going for. So I kind of left him to his own devices for a lot of the time.
The design aspect of this film was to create a world that didn't exist. So you've got all, you know, some pretty intense backgrounds and atmospheres to make a world that, you know, the normal person doesn't hear or see. So in Purgatory, what does Purgatory sound like? I've got a couple of very all-time favourite films. James Cameron's Aliens is a perfect example of the use of atmospheres in a film to create a space where, as a person, you're scared to be.
I feel slow, more heavy.
Brian Kitchia, the composer, and myself headed off down the coast one night down to Wollongong to the steelworks and had a couple of microphones set up on some ridiculously tall mic stands. So a lot of the sounds that you do here are real sounds, you know, and you know, a bit of processing and filtering. We get to create something that sounds entirely different, but is believable in the context of this film.
Be silent, Gabriel! Silence yourself!
Hear me, Gabriel! You're mine! They're coming for you! Gabriel! You can hear me! Silence your mind!
A lot of scenes in this particular film are a combination of not necessarily orchestral score, but more of a feeling, more of a soundscape in the music side of things, as well as what I was doing in the design side. So we had these instances where, and to be quite honest, I look at a particular scene now and I can't remember, was that me or was that Brian doing those particular scenes? And that we were able to work so closely together and getting the sounds that we needed for the film to work together, so that there wasn't a case of getting to the mix stage at the end of the film going, oh, okay, well that doesn't work, so we'll leave that out, or got to have this and leave this out. It was sort of a case of early in the piece going, okay, well I'm going to do this, cool, well I'll work to this part.
I suppose there's that many characters in this film that it's kind of pretty hard to stick to one thing, and you're kind of moving with the story and you're really following what's going on.
They were weak! They were your brothers! They would never have understood!
It was exhausting, absolutely exhausting. Long nights, long days, big days in the studio, choirs, modest-sized orchestras and musicians and and people who just come on board, and some people working for free, some people working for the promise of a DVD at the end. It was crazy. Okay, we're ready to go? Anything manipulated, anything real, anything synthetic, anything organs. I pulled an upright piano apart. I belted it with a hammer. I bowed cymbals. I bowed anything. To half sound design, to half throwing a guitar amplifier on the ground and miking it up. The challenges were to make that all sound like a musical score. Heavy metal was something that had to be established. I couldn't afford in my budget to get a heavy metal band. We couldn't license anything decent, more than decent, so the heavy metal had to be created. One of the crazy scenes in the film was Gabriel going crazy, ramming the butt of a gun into Asmodeus's head, and I couldn't for the life of me think of anything musical, so I picked up this amplifier and just... The only way I could find to make the score sound big was to use a layering technique. I want this one to feel like we're slipping. So with a 10-piece string section, I would just continuously layer individual lines from a piece of music until all of the lines put together made for a very rich, royal, thick sound.
He had an idea about the feeling of this city, which I guess works in with the oppression feel of the entire world that he's created. But it gives that feeling of, is this city actually sinking, or is it just moving? Is it what we just don't know? I would come up with some ideas, run them past Shane, and Shane would basically go, "That's great, now make it bigger."
Shoot me if you must, but I ask that you listen to what I have to say first. You lie!
Absolutely, dialogue is the one thing that kept me going throughout this whole film. If I was out of ideas, if I was struggling for any kind of inspiration, all I needed to do was listen to the dialogue and watch the performances. The performances were outstanding, so I couldn't really go wrong.
This can't be true. But you know it is.
My favourite piece is Slaves to a Higher Purpose.
I taught you everything you know. I can hear it in your thoughts. Say it!
But the rooftop, I remember he rang me and said, I'm writing the rooftop. And I said, great, when we hear it. He said, just leave me for about 3 or 4 days and come back to me. And I did. And when I turned up, I don't think there was one thing I wanted to change in the rooftop.
The music, I feel, at that section really went with the speech, and at the moment Michael has said, the turn that happens there, I feel, makes a big impact on the film.
Say it!
And then the grade, when sort of the colour grade was very, it was so important. And we got Warren Lynch because he'd worked on Lord of the Rings, and and I think Warren kind of quoted us for about 18 hours of time in his suite to work and do the movie. And I think we spent about 4.5 months in there. I think I slept on Warren's couch. He had a big couch up the back, and I think I slept in there for weeks on end, just so we could kind of keep working, and I'd sit in there at night.
I'm racking at the moment, which means I'm taking the 16:9 image, which is how we shot the film, and so when it goes out to the theatres, it's we're going to do it projected in 235.
That's probably the most. That's probably the physically, the most ill I got on the film, was because I was averaging about 2 nights sleep a week, and those 2 nights were about 6 hours long. So I think the grade and the delivery was the hardest part of the film, and I think because Sony LA didn't know what kind of film we were making and the kind of limited budget we were always working with. So, they kind of said, deliver this, deliver that, do this, and to do even the simplest delivery was quite tricky for us because, again, no time and no money to do it.
What's the matter? What's wrong?
Dad.
Who?
I saw the film recently in the cinema with an audience, and it was fantastic. It was such a buzz, and to see people respond to it, I think some people sort of go in expecting this big $100 million blockbuster, but then they realise it's a much more humble film, but it's got such a soul and a heart to it, and that sort of is irreplaceable. So when you watch it with the right audience and they sort of understand, what's being achieved, it's what we do it for. It's what you spend 3 years absolutely killing yourself to do.
And if I never do another film, I'll be quite happy, because this was great.
Shana Bess and Matt Hilton Todd created a masterpiece, and I just feel extremely honoured and grateful to have been considered to contribute.
Between Shane and Matty, man, I mean, it's a world. It's got everything in it. It's got absolutely everything in it.
I think people are going to really find this movie interesting because it has a lot of the values that old classic films used to have.
It was just a collection of crazy bastards and bastards willing to sort of put forth all their energy into this film, and that will all translate on screen.
You couldn't ask for more than what we've got with what we had.
Bloody hard work. I think 3 words, it pretty much sums it up, and I think anyone who's worked on this film would probably be the same way.
So it was wonderful. It was everything you could ever ask for.
A once-in-a-lifetime experience.
Fun.
Fun. Career changing. Just awesome.
Maddie and I have written parts 2 and 3 to this story, and I can't think of a better classroom or a better way to make a movie than we had to make this, because this is fucking down and dirty, in the gutter, blood, sweat and tears type of filmmaking. So the next time, hopefully, when there's a budget and some time and a bit more of maybe the creature comforts which make a film easier to get through, I can't imagine what we're going to do, because we did this with nothing.
I'm really looking forward to what comes next.
When we have a little bit of help and the wind in our sails, I can't imagine where this story is going to go. Well, I know where the story goes and I love it, but I can't imagine how much fun the audience is going to have when we get to take the next step in this journey.